Hey everyone, this is Mark from supplyhouse.com, and this is our second Facebook Live, and we're here today with Wes Cisco from Uponor and Jim DePalma from Wales Derby. And today we're going to talk a lot about PEX tubing and Uponor's PEX system. So before we start answering some questions, Wes, if you could just sort of tell everybody a little bit about you, how you started with Uponor, how you started in the business, anything like that.
Okay. Hello, everybody. I'm Wes Cisco with Uponor, of course, and been in this industry now, I hate to say it, getting a little gray here, over 30 years. And started out, we were doing some family plumbing and stuff like that, and I moved to Supply House and regional positions, and been with Uponor now in year 17. So still kind of new at it, I guess. But plumbing, heating, air conditioning, refrigeration, electrical, that kind of stuff, been doing all my life. Really enjoy it.
And Jim, I know we talked to you last time. You work with Wales Derby, which is a representative company, and but so today we're talking about PEX and things like that. So I'm wondering if you could sort of maybe tell everybody, you've been working in the business for a long time. So when did PEX sort of start to take off? If you remember that.
Well, Uponor, actually we went to market as Worsbo when we first were in this market, and we worked our way up and got very strong in the world of radiant heat. And that was growing and growing well, and then the copper market went crazy. Copper market became very unstable in pricing, and we had the opportunity in plumbing to use PEX pipe instead of copper. And once that occurred, PEX being a stable product, we just started to grab more and more market share, and it kept growing and growing, and it's been doing that ever since.
That's great. So what we're going to do here today is we're going to take questions from everybody here on Facebook. So we encourage everyone to ask whatever you want about PEX tubing, Uponor, the expansion system, whatever you want. And at the end of this broadcast, so around 6:55-ish, we are going to give away 2 Milwaukee M12 expansion tools.
Yes.
Wes, if you could show what we're giving away there. Yeah, that's good. So we're going to give that tool away. We're going to give 2 of them away, and all you have to do to enter to win this tool is ask a question. Ask a question below. So the first thing, can you just sort of give a basic overview about the Uponor PEX system, for plumbing or heating?
Right. So we make tubing anywhere from, on the plumbing side, 1/4 inch all the way up to 3 inch in size. It's all PEX-a tubing. It's all angle method PEX. There's 3 types of PEX in the world. There's a PEX-a, a PEX-b, and a PEX-c. So under high temperature and high pressure at the point of extrusion, PEX-a is made. So it comes out of the extruder as a amorphic state. In other words, it's clear. So when it comes out, what went into the extruder and what comes out of the extruder are 2 different animals. So once it's extruded, it's one single process. It is now a PEX-a tubing. So when in as a polyethylene, comes out cross-linked polyethylene. Now with the other ones, you're looking at a PEX-b and a PEX-c. They're going to have a 2-part process. They go in, come out of the extruder, PE, polyethylene, kind of like polyethylene with an attitude. So if it's going to be a PEX-b, there's a silane chemical that's mixed in. That silane chemical then, secondary process, that roll or that straight length would go through a heat and moisture chamber. That heat and moisture chamber will cause that silane to react and cause more chemical cross-linking, generating those hydrogen to hydrogen bonds. They can't consistently get to all those molecules, so you get more cross-linking so much on the outside of the jacket than you do on the inside of the pipe itself. If you're looking at a PEX-c, once again, secondary process, so cold extruded like a PEX-b. Once it comes out, it goes through now an electron beam cannon. Basically, it's like it's being microwaved, right? So they're exciting the molecules and crossing it that way. But once again, we've microwaved something without the turntable going. You can't get consistent heating throughout or cross-linking throughout. Hence, if Jim would demonstrate here, we have 2 samples. We have a Uponor PEX-a sample, and also we have another PEX-b sample, the other guy.
Kink them?
And we'll go ahead and kink them. Yeah. And because of the cross-linking, and he's going to kink them at the same time, because of the cross-linking that we do under high temperature and high pressure, okay, you'll see the thermal elastic memory is a lot stronger than that PEX-b is going to be.
I could do this all day.
So, all PEX are not the same, that's for sure.
Any twisting?
Keep on going.
All right,
Keep
baby.
on going. Gotta get you a little speed here, you know.
Oh, faster?
Yeah.
Oh, no problem. I'm sorry. I've gotten older now. Uh-oh.
So keep going. Keep going. All right, all the way down.
All the way
Yeah,
down?
because I want everybody to say, well, Wes did it, of course.
There you
know,
go.
It's going to be.
It's,
So there you go.
there you go.
So you end up with two pieces. Now that we have this piece here that is kinked, and I'll kink it some more, we can then heat it up. And if you hit slide 1 for a sec, you'll see right here on this slide, as it's coming out the extruder, that little silver cylinder, that's going to be an inkjet printer where we put our codes and standards on the tubing every 5 feet. You'll see the pipe is going to be clear. We call it the amorphic state. That's the point of how it was born, right? So we're going to go ahead and heat it up again with this heat gun. And we're going to get it back to being clear again as amorphic state. And this is an allowable manufacturer repair on a job site. So if you happen to kink something on a job site, zero problem getting out a heat gun, taking the kink right out. Now once again, I said heat gun, not torch. Not your torch. PEX will not melt. You can get it to ignite, but if you put 3,000 degrees on anything, you would ignite too. So I have this heat gun going around. You'll see it turning clear. Notice it's not melting. Notice the kink came right out. Notice there's no hole in the tubing whatsoever. And I'll heat up just a little bit more to show you some added strengths. So I can take it and I can twirl it, and it's still going to come right back. So it is strong. This is a durable product. Once that cools, it can go right back into service.
Now, once that cools completely, if we try to kink it again, it'll kink in another spot.
It'll
correct?
kink in a different spot, correct.
So the pipe's not weakened at all. It's very, very strong, just the way it was born.
So Frank, while we're waiting for that to come back, Frank Stein Ruck asks if there's an actual complete hole in it. Could that be heated back?
No, the only thing he'll get at that point is a tiny hole. Okay, but there's this. We always say it's like, you know, amorphic. It's going to come back to its original shape and size. But if you put a hole in it, it's not quite magic. So it's not going to self-seal. That would be great, wouldn't it?
Right.
Yeah.
So, you know, separately, but people have asked a lot about is there added benefits with PEX as far as freezing?
Right. When it comes to our PEX will expand 300% of its size before it thinks about splitting. So this half-inch piece can go all the way up to 1.5 inches before it thinks about splitting. If you catch it before it splits, right, because it's the last thing in the house to split of all piping systems, we can hit it with a heat gun. It'll go back down to the original shape and size and right back into service. And you can add pressure and have the, you know, water flowing all over again. So this right here is going to save you. Unlike if you have, you know, another type of where it'll split on a seam, or, you know, the fittings themselves will grow a little bit.
Right.
Right. So that's the benefit you're going to have here. So freeze resistant, not freeze proof.
Right. Now maybe we could demonstrate the connection.
Right. The connection itself is really simple. You're going to take a piece of PEX tubing itself. The ring and the PEX are made out of the same exact material. I'm going to go ahead and slide the ring on. I have my fitting standing by. I take my expanding tool, happens to be on my M12 tool, and I'm going to insert it in. I'm not going to have a lot of pressure on here. I can actually turn it upside down, and you'll see it'll walk itself right in. And what I want to do is make sure it comes down to the shoulder of the tool here, right? Once it gets down to that point, make a couple more expansions, and I take my fitting and I slide it right in. So right now, it's gone back from, you know, the expanded, getting back now down to this original size, you know, when it came out of the extruder. Now the funny part is, our fitting, our connection here, this is the weakest it's ever going to be. It's always going to get stronger and stronger from this point on because it's trying to get back to its original shape and size. So right now, there's no way I can get this out of here. So I can pressure test right now.
For a plumbing contractor, this is actually brilliant, because now he can check everybody on the job to see if they made the perfect connection. We need to be shoulder to shoulder. No gap in between here at all. Actually, the width of a credit card flat would be the most we would accept. So he would know if everybody on his crew was making the fitting correctly. Where our competitors, where they do their crimp systems, you see that ring in all different positions. There's never like a standard. So now every single fitting is a visual standard, and everybody would know if it was done properly or not.
Got it.
All right. On top of that, because it's made out of the same material as the pipe itself, the rings are, and then you have your engineered polymer fitting, this can be directly buried in concrete. It can go into aggressive soils. Okay, will handle any type of glycol. So you have a very almost bulletproof system here.
Shelby Tucker wants to know how durable the PEX is after you use the heat gun on it.
How durable is the PEX after the heat gun? That's an excellent question. And you know what? I'm going to run to a video, the burst test video for you here, and let you check that one out. So here we've gotten to the point where it's almost ruptured. It's called a ductile balloon. So we're going to heat that balloon up, and it's going to go back down to its original shape and size. So these are all PEX-a samples. It just happens to be an A sample, a B sample, and a C sample of all PEX-a, of our Uponor PEX. So once they heat it back up, they're also going to take a marker and kind of, you can see where, for lack of better terms, where it expanded out. They're going to put a little marker around there to make sure we understand exactly where it was. So when we pressure test it again, that, we make sure it's not the same spot. So we want to make sure we have a nice little reference line. So here comes that C sample. So of course, they're going to go ahead and mark it. And then once we finish marking it, we're going to go ahead and put it back into a hydrostatic bath, and it's going to be, burst test all over again, just like we had that ductile, balloon. So we're heating it up. All right. So here's the first burst test. You can see the mark where the ductile failure or ductile balloon happened the first time. And you can see different spot. Notice the connection never weakened either. That's 764 pounds. Here's another sample, sample B of PEX-a. 795 pounds. Notice the connection never weakened and the fitting never moved. Here's 789 PSI.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, a lot of pressure there.
So pretty strong.
Pretty strong, pretty durable.
Manuel Romo asks, he says he lives in Texas with clay soil, and he wants to know how Uponor fares buried in clay dirt.
No problem at all. Directly in fitting, connection, directly in your clay soil, zero problem.
So we didn't really touch on this. What you showed, the connection that you showed was the EP fittings.
Right, engineered polymer.
Phil Stelzer wants to know about the pros and cons of the EP fittings versus the brass fittings.
Right. So it all depends, right? It depends on your faction. Some people will say, "Oh man, real men, we use brass and that's it." And then others will say, "You know what, engineered polymer is the way to go." But that kind of reminds me of this video we have. I'm kind of saying this: if you want to look at a couple things, one is sometimes it comes down to cost, right? You want to get on the job, you want to value engineer that job. That EP fitting is going to be a lot more cost competitive than you're looking at that brass fitting, of the same equivalent, of that brass fitting. Both of these will do the same job, but let's go over to a little test we have here called a pull test. And on a pull test, let's see how, quote unquote, the EP fitting fares against, what you call a metal fitting or a brass fitting. I'm kind of thinking this video itself will kind of self-explanatory on durability of EP. Now this is a 2-inch connection. It's a 90. It's an inch-strong test. That's where we're trying to pull it straight. And notice that over time, you would think that connection would actually weaken, and if the connection doesn't fall apart, then of course, well, the 90's got to break. It's gonna, it's got to break. So we'll keep on pulling, and on the screen to the left, it's actually going to roll up in pounds per foot, and also you're looking at your deflection for inches. So at the end, we're looking at 13.3, you'll see that coming up very shortly, 13.3 inches of deflection and 3,000 pounds of force put on that connection, and never once did the connection budge, and or did we break that 90. And I don't think, if you're looking at some of that competitor stuff out there, if we're looking something generically by saying copper or even CPVC or something like that could hold up to it, let alone the other connection systems looking at crimp and clamp and things like that.
So you actually bring that up. I know on our social media channels, the debate is always copper versus PEX. And a lot of the argument, and we spoke about this earlier today, a lot of the argument has to do with the length that copper has been around versus the length that PEX has been around. And people are afraid that there hasn't been enough testing done on PEX. So now I know that you guys have done some extensive testing, so maybe you could talk on that.
Right. So if you go to slide 5, so here you're looking at some long-term testing we've done. We have two third-party tested for over 30 years, sustained pressure of 175 PSI at 203 degrees. It got to the point where the test ran over 30 years, and they couldn't figure out, well, you know what, it's not giving up any pressure, it's not giving up any temperature. In other words, couldn't find a knee point where it just gave up. So we extrapolated that out, and we know that the tubing will last at least 100 years, but the funny part about it is, what kind of testing was done on the other stuff? Everybody talks about what, can you handle it, and you can handle it. We have over 30 years worth of testing, we have a 25-year warranty. And a lot of times I see the guys, they'll say, well, I'm going to do copper in this house, or I'm going to do PEX in this house, but I got the copper job because, quite frankly, I get more money for the copper job. I'm kind of wondering, couldn't we charge the same? And, everybody makes out in the end, because when you don't explain something to a customer, at the end of the day, the differentiation becomes the price. And as most consumers, we think what costs more is better.
I like to add, in my territory, northern New Jersey, we've got some areas where the water is so aggressive, a brand new copper install will last about a year before pinholes happen. And this happened in my in-laws' home. And the fix for those areas was to go to PEX pipe, and specifically the Uponor PEX. And it's the product of choice in those areas just because of that really aggressive water.
Right.
It's the only thing that'll stand up to it.
All right. And then other parts of the country, not only aggressive water, but aggressive soils, and also air conditionings, as far as if you're in the Florida, area, something like that, that ocean spray, okay, it's going to be very, very caustic when it comes to your, not our brass fittings themselves. I'm talking about as far as the odor clamp or the actual crimp ring itself. So those things you have to look out for.
So two things that are sort of the cons of PEX that I wanted to talk about. But first, sort of the UV sensitivity of PEX. Maybe we could sort of talk a little bit about that. And Marshall Woodall wanted to know the difference in UV sensitivity between the blue and the red and the clear. But, if you could talk generally first.
Sure. So we have all of our PEX products are the same, right? So they all start base right here, PEX-a tubing. This is what we call our natural PEX. And then we have a blue, and we have a red, and we also have a purple for reclamation, okay, for reclaimed water. But the blue is going to hold, and also the red is going to hold a 90-day UV exposure, where the white pipe or the natural pipe is going to have a 30-day UV exposure due to the additives and things like that we do to UV inhibitors. The one thing I want to explain, though, is that we always get that question like, what about the 31st day? Is it just going to burst into flames or whatever and just fall apart? Well, the thing about it, it's not a vampire. We'll go with that, okay? But what is going to happen is you have UV stabilizers in this pipe, okay, that's going to do everything it can to protect the tubing, but UV is the kryptonite to all plastics. Now, let's go back real quick. If you're looking at UV, how long would this really be exposed to sunlight compared to how long would it be exposed to water? Because in a system, I'm thinking a copper system, you just mentioned it, Jim, that, low pH water causes pinhole leaks, which you have to admit is product failure, okay? But now all of a sudden we want to hold this to a different standard and say it's all about the sunlight. And I don't see too many plumbing systems in a sunlight situation. It's going to be the job site, it's going to be stored correctly, original, packaging, it should be good to go. So I don't see that being a major problem.
We supply a lot of docks with water, so boaters can clean their boats.
Right.
From fishing and stuff like that. They plumb them all in PEX, and if it's going to be exposed to the sun, they just leave it in an Armorflex type product, and they have no issues.
I got it.
If it was 30 days, that means 30 days of 24-hour continuous.
Right, no night times.
Right. So.
Right. And also, we also have another product called EcoFlex that has a UV inhibited jacket on it if you'd like to use it for outdoor use or above ground.
So Charles Bronson, not sure if he's the actor, he wants to know what the ID of the fitting is versus the pipe.
Okay.
Excellent.
Excellent question. The ID, the inside diameter of the fitting, is actually a little bit larger the inside dimension of the tubing, so you're going to get a much greater flow through our fitting system than any other PEX system out there. And that's the other thing you have to consider. This is what we considered. I don't have a comparison right now, but our half-inch compared to someone else's half-inch in insert fitting, whether it's going to be what they consider brass fitting, a 1807, or plastic fitting, a 2159 insert fitting type, you can actually take a drinking straw, like a McDonald's drinking straw, right, like a shake straw, and put it right in here. It's the same size. So do you want to base your whole plumbing system on basically a straw size flow rate?
Got it.
Yeah, so full flow with this connection.
One other thing that we haven't really talked about, which is important to a plumbing contractor, he can't dry fit this connection. None of his guys can put the ring on, push the fitting in, and then forget to do something else. They have to go through the expansion process.
Right.
Where our competitors do have systems where the ring can go on, the fitting can be pushed on, and they can forget to do that final crimp. And they will hold pressure, but then at some point they're going to release, and then you have a disaster. So that cannot happen with this connection.
And even to add to that, when you're making this connection, you have this M12 tool or an M18 or your Force Logic tool. You have this tool. This tool does not require any calibration whatsoever. When you're looking at a crimp connection, you have to calibrate that tool, right? Make the crimp, and then use a go, no-go gauge, which everybody's using those, right? Okay. And then if you're looking at a copper system, after you cut copper, what are you supposed to do? You're supposed to ream it. I know you might be hearing this for the first time. Don't be alarmed, but you're supposed to ream it before making that next connection. So there's one tool, one step, boom, done.
Now, I had mentioned earlier about the two sort of cons that I knew about, and one of them is from James Clough's question. He asks about rodents chewing on the PEX pipe and if there's anything being done to help deter this issue. He said he's from New England.
Okay. Well, hello. When it comes to rodents, there's nothing inherent in the tubing that attracts any rodent to the pipe, right? It's not like they can smell the water in the pipe or anything like that, or the pipe itself smells like rawhide to them. There's nothing there. If it's in the way of where they're trying to go or burrow through, yes, they're going to try to take a bite out of it. If it was a copper pipe, they do the same thing. They definitely know PPC, and they also regular PVC. My point to you, though, is there's nothing in here that's going to attract, pretty much Mickey, but you might have a Mickey problem and not a PEX problem. Right. So we'd have to think about how many rodents we're looking at this. It might be a rodent issue.
Chris Clark wants to know about, back to the fittings, he wants to know about removing and reusing the fittings. Is that possible?
Right, reclamation of a fitting.
Okay.
We don't reclaim our EP, our engineered polymer fitting, but we will reclaim the brass fitting. So you would actually cut off the ring, and that's all. And we have a manual called a PDAM, or Plumbing Design Assistance Manual. And in there, we'll show you where you cut off the ring. You'll heat the pipe. You will pull out the brass fitting, and then you cut about 2 inches back, okay, and then start with a new ring and start the process all over again. We don't reclaim the EP because when they cut through the ring sometimes they'll actually gouge, okay, make grooves into the fitting itself, and that's a leak potential. We don't want to have that.
So once it's got a groove or a gouge, you can't use it again.
Right. Once you got a groove or a gouge, I wouldn't reuse it at all.
And that's different. The brass just wouldn't happen to that.
Right. You can do that with the brass, but it also, when you're looking at the heat, the brass is, the heat is better with the brass. Yep.
Now, Cody Sly Moberly asked about the plumbing advantages compared to Viega PEX crimp rings. I know
Right.
you sort of spoke about the crimp rings, but maybe, are there any other advantages to using your
Well,
system?
besides the flow,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
There's going to be much better flow.
Yep.
And then, of course, you're looking at the rings themselves where, like Jim had alluded to before, where's the ring actually going to tubing? So you don't get a consistent system the whole time. And there's going to be a couple steps. One is, like I said, you got to calibrate the tool. Number, two, you got to do that no-go gauge. And then, like I said before, when you're looking at delivery of the water system itself, resistance to flow and a lot more fittings.
Travis Worsel wants to know if you make a product that he can use to run in-floor heat. We've sort of been talking about plumbing. We haven't really talked much about the heat idea.
All day.
Yeah, that's how we kind of cut our teeth. This happens to be a section of Worsbo heat PEX tubing, and it has an oxygen diffusion barrier on it. So that oxygen barrier is an EVOH barrier. Ethyl vinyl alcohol is what we're using, and that's going to limit the amount of oxygen molecules that can enter the side of the tubing. This is made directly for radiant floor heating, or walls or ceilings, that kind of deal, directly into the slab. That's exactly what we do. So come on down, we got it.
Absolutely.
Do you need to give PEX when you're putting it in the wall? Do you need to give it slack for it to expand through the years?
I hear that a lot. Our PEX will expand 1.1 inches per 10-degree rise over 100 feet. We also make a PEX-a pipe support material that actually snaps onto the tubing. It's a 23 gauge product. It's 9 feet in length, and that's going to limit a lot of the expansion and contraction. But there's no real slack needed. You would plumb, just like you would do any other system. The one thing you have to remember, though, instead of doing a lot of 90s, you're actually going to bend. So we have bend supports and things like that. So in a system, because of thermoelastic memory, you're still going to have to do your normal, best practices if you need a water hammer or something like that, a rester. But it's the last thing that's going to cause noise in your system, this Uponor PEX, right? I've seen some systems out there, PEX systems, that have an extreme high expansion rate, and you will hear them in the walls, okay? But this one installed correctly, you won't hear that creep at all. Yep.
That question was also from Frank Steinruck. He also asked if the Milwaukee M12 expansion tool is the only electric tool on the market.
It's the only electric tool that we have out right now, and it's not actually us. This is a Milwaukee tool. We had some other battery-operated tools, REMS tool of the past. We had a pneumatic tool.
Okay.
The only tool that we have that's still in the arsenal is going to be that 2-inch tool, and that's that 2-inch corded 201 tool, and that's it. And that one's slowly phasing itself out because of the Force Logic tool going from 2-inch, 2.5-inch, and 3-inch.
Yeah, that Milwaukee tool protocol fits with a lot of contractors. A lot of them already have Milwaukee. They already have these batteries.
Right.
So it's easy for them to bring that into their,
Nice transition.
nice transition, yeah. Thank you.
And this, now, what about the M18? That's for bigger sizes?
Right, so this size here, this M12 will handle anything from 3/8 all the way up to 1 inch in size. And then its big brother, the next one, the M18, so this is the M12 battery platform. The M18 platform will handle anything from 3/8 all the way up to 1.5 inches. And then there's a Force Logic tool that will take it from 2, 2.5, and 3 inches. So we can go all the way from 3/8 all the way up to 3-inch with an expansion with a ProPEX connection.
Now, I saw this question earlier. Is there anything about chemical leaching with PEX? Is there something, does it stop that or anything like that?
Right. Now, I always get, and I hear this sometimes too, we have it in our house and we noticed the white pipe, it turned yellow, it got a little yellowish, whitish, or it turned a little orange or something like that. There's nothing inherent in the tubing that's actually leaching into the pipe itself. It's food grade, BPA free. If anything, you're looking at ferrous components staining the inside wall or manganese, and that's going to be a water issue, not a pipe issue. The only thing is that if they had a copper system, they wouldn't see it, but yet the reactants on the inside of the copper from those minerals would actually start, I call it barnacle bill. You'd have to have a little buildup.
Right.
There's no buildup here whatsoever.
Yeah, if we get that, what is it, orange, that's like high iron in the
High
water,
iron in the
correct?
water, correct.
Yeah. So now you have to actually see what your water's doing to your system.
Steve Sloan Jr. Asks, how do you get certified as an installer, and how does the warranty work?
Okay. The warranty goes out to licensed contractors, licensed plumbers, and we'll actually take you through what we call an Aquapex training. And you get a little peel-off card, and that gives you a 25-year warranty. The 25-year warranty means complete system. That means the pipe, the ring, and also the fitting itself. If you're using someone else's fitting and our ring and our pipe, then you get a 10-year warranty on the pipe, and then you have only, whatever the manufacturer warranty of that fitting, and that connection is all yours. So if you want the full system warranty, it's a 25-year warranty. And it's not one of those warranties where, the fitting fails, God forbid, and we just give you another fitting, another ring. It's going to be a real world warranty. So, God forbid the house was destroyed, we'll replace the house with that warranty.
Well, one of the things that's important, we seem to be concentrating on pipe and fittings. Whether it's radiant or plumbing, we are a complete system. So it's not like you have to buy our pipe and then go elsewhere to find everything else to finish whatever system you're doing. So our catalog, when you look at an Uponor catalog, it's almost like 4 different businesses within that catalog.
Right.
There's the radiant side, there's the hydronic pipe size, large diameter, the plumbing side, the fire sprinkler side. So it's a system.
Yeah.
This is just part of the system.
Now, speaking of the system, can you talk a little bit about HEPEX and maybe the difference between HEPEX and Aquapex?
Sure. The only difference between HEPEX and Aquapex is the barrier.
Okay.
That's it. The one thing that most people don't know is that HEPEX is also dual rated, so you can use that in the plumbing system. So it is dual rated. It wasn't before, but it is dual rated now. So HEPEX, if you have some extra HEPEX left over off of a radiant system, no problem doing it in the plumbing system, putting it right in. Yep. If you use an Aquapex for a radiant system, well, you have to go through other things because it doesn't have that oxygen diffusion barrier. So you're looking at non-ferrous components, no cast iron, right? So it's going to be stainless steel, brass, that kind of stuff, or copper heat exchanger, that kind of thing, or isolated with a plate heat exchanger.
Got it.
Yeah.
I got a quick question that I actually want to answer. Keith St. Pierre asks, he mentions that in the video that we posted earlier today with the expansion tool, that when we are doing the expanding, the tool goes really fast, and he thought that his was broken. My answer is no, we sped that up.
Yeah, we
sped we tried to make sure the video was 30 seconds, so that's why. So your tool works fine.
Right.
Now, this Brian Heaney is challenging here a little bit. He says, what they don't tell you is that after a little bit of time, the cross links break down, and tons of people are having issues with hydronics. He says, so don't use it. And copper needs to be reamed, ID, to keep turbulence from creating pinholes. But do you have a response about the cross links breaking down?
Cross-linking breaking down?
I've never even heard
No.
of cross-linking breaking down. I don't know how it's possible. When we extrude it, we actually change the molecular state, and it's going to be cross-linked, for the life of the product. So I'm not sure what product he's dealing with, but our PEX-a product, no problem whatsoever in a hydronic system. We started off in a hydronic world years ago. We cut our teeth on the hydronics. So if we would have had some failures, it would have shown up by now.
Yeah.
The first system I ever put in was back in '88. And to this day, like I said, not a problem that I know of. Yeah. And I've never heard of cross-linking breaking down.
Yeah, if you go past any temperature and pressure ratings that are clearly stamped on the pipe, yeah, you could have an issue. So if he's talking hydronics and he ran it for baseboard and he puts over 200 degrees in here, yeah, it's not rated to go over 200 degrees. And it's stated on the product.
Right.
So
Right. So it's
those are the things to watch out for.
Right, 200 degrees, 80 psi.
So I'll just tell you guys, we have a lot of people saying that they use Uponor, and it's working great for them. So
We love you guys.
Thank you very much.
if any of you guys are on Twitter, you can use hashtag SupplyHouseLive, ask questions on there as well. And also just a quick reminder, at the end of this, around 6:55-ish, we will be giving away 2 of those Milwaukee M12 expander tools to people asking questions. Now, a couple people asked where the pipe is made. So I know that you have.
I am finally,
Yeah.
and with a heavy heart, always saying that I get choked up every time I think about it, but it's made in Apple Valley, Minnesota, and every time I bring any family members into town, I'm originally a Philly boy, it's really weird. I know Mom was saying, like, I can't believe you're doing this, but we go from the airport right to the factory before we go to the house, because I want her to see it, and I'm telling you, every time everybody goes through, they're just blown away. Can't believe it. She came back to the house saying, "Oh my God, I can't believe it. I thought it was going to be something boring, you know." And she said she had such a good time. But I'll be honest with you, man, that place is so near and dear to me. It's not funny, yeah. But it's made right there, Apple Valley, Minnesota.
Scott Wirebaugh wants to know if it needs to be sleeved when running in concrete or up through the slab.
If you're coming out of a slab, you want to sleeve it just for expansion and contraction purposes. But while you're in the concrete, I mean, we do it for radiant all the time. Not necessary. For plumbing, not necessary either. So if it's going to be slab on grade and you got the plumbing in the slab, no, not necessary. But when you come out, you should.
Right. The other thing about that is floor finishers on a commercial application, you come out of the floor, you know, kind of roll it out of some conduit or something like that, because when they come through that finish machine, we want to make sure they don't hit our tubing. We just want to protect it a little bit.
Right.
Yeah.
Steve Heffelfinger wants to know, should the EP bend supports be used instead of the metal ones?
Either one.
Either one.
Either one. They're both good. So you can use the metal one or bend support. Your preference. Either one.
Phil Stelzer says he sees that Uponor makes EP manifolds, but he doesn't see a 3/8 manifold, and he wanted to know if those exist. And also, could you talk about EP manifolds?
Sure. So what does he mean by 3/8? As far as connecting with 3/8?
Yeah.
Right. You can connect with 3/8 to our manifolds.
Okay.
Yep. So it's a compression adapter that goes right onto that QS20 connection.
Okay.
That'd be the bottom of the outlets. So we do have that. And what was the other question? I'm sorry.
You just asked if you could talk about the EP
wanna talk
manifolds.
Oh, sure. The EP manifolds, one of my favorites. What I like about the EP manifold is that, you know, flow rate's pretty good. You know, high flow rate. It falls in between the stainless steel and also the True Flow Classic and Junior. And the weight is another thing, as I'm considering, you know, mounting this on a wall, okay, or ceiling, okay, or on the ceiling, you know, if I'm doing radiant ceiling, you know, floor above, and I'm rolling the manifold under the floor, nice little place for it too, tucked in. But it's just so easy, modular, comes with the, you know, isolation valves, your temperature gauges are on it and everything like that. So I don't know, I have a little affinity for that one. To me, it's just, it's been bulletproof, rock solid, and like I said, it comes out the box ready to go on the wall.
Yeah, I mean, that's all we spec. Part of our job as being the rep, we help our contractors lay out and design radiant systems.
Okay.
It's kind of like my specialty at my office, and every job I spec out with Uponor product has an EP manifold.
Yeah.
That's what we lead with.
You know, there's a YouTube video that I shot with balancing the manifold, so take a look for that one too, on how to balance that manifold. So you do some isolation and purging too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, what are the, and we're sort of all over the place here, but what are the heating systems for radiant heat? Uponor has two heating systems, right? Joist track and...
Oh, you're talking about...
Yeah.
All install methods, yeah.
Yeah, there's 7 distinct methods.
Okay.
So you're looking at joist
Yep.
application, that's with or without joist track plates. Then you're looking at quick track, right? And then you'll move into your poured floor underlayment, like your gypsum or your concrete floor. And then we'll have another one, fast track 0.5, which is like a knob panel. It takes 5/16 tubing. And then you also have fast track 1.3i, has a little bit of insulation, like a thermal break, and it'll accommodate 1/2 inch and 3/8 tubing.
Great. Glenn from Las Vegas says, how does the polymer hold up to chlorine degradation? He says, I have a water main from the city sidewalk to my house foundation that ruptured due to chlorine. Not sure if it was PEX tubing, but it is some type of polymer.
Right. The funny part, you mentioned Vegas. We own the Vegas market because of that. Yeah, because the soils are aggressive, the water's aggressive. So that's, once again, a go-to. We're a go-to there.
Devin Farrell, besides strapping the PEX almost every joist or 14 to 18 inches, does Uponor sell a pipe that is similar to Vista's Fostapex?
We do have, it's called an MLC, multi-layer composite PEX-L PEX pipe, but he doesn't have to do that.
No.
Right.
He can use a PEX-a pipe support. PEX-a pipe support is, like I said, it's 9 foot in length, 23 gauge metal, like a, think of it almost like a trough almost.
Okay.
And it snaps in, it holds on really, really tight. And then after that, you got your normal spacings, whether it can be a 6 foot or every 8 feet, that kind of deal. So it acts just like straight pipe.
Right.
Also eliminates a lot of the expansion too. Yeah.
I just saw Brian Hart asked if he could buy it in 500-foot rolls.
Yes, what size?
What's that?
The 1/2 inch tubing?
Yeah.
Yes, 500 footers, no problem. 1,000 footers also.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, thank you. We'll make more.
What about PEX to water heaters? Is that possible?
Yes, PEX to water heaters, there's just a couple little rules to follow, a couple little things. If you're looking at a fossil fuel water heater, anything, gas, oil, you want to make sure you're 18 inches away, from the water heater connection itself. We have a corrugated, steel or flexible line you want to use, and then you can go from PEX to that point on. If it's an electric water heater, you can go direct connect to an electric water heater, no problem.
Okay.
Yeah, I've seen guys sweat on 45s and just angle out that way, and then, so this way they stay away from the venting, and then off they go throughout the house.
Got it. Some question we get from time to time is about needing an electrical ground when you're using PEX as opposed to when you're using copper.
Right, because I tell everybody this story. We found out a long time ago, copper makes great wire. It does. Makes great wire. PEX terrible wire. But when you're looking at a system like this, you definitely want to make sure that, I personally don't want to use my plumbing system to be my common ground for the neutral in my house. Okay? I want to go ahead and do a ground rod. So run a ground rod, use PEX tubing, and you're safe on both sides. Because God forbid if someone goes, and you normally see this clamp connection right over the water heater, the hot and cold coming out of the water heater, you normally see like a, solid copper wire coming across and it's clamped onto those two pipes. Well, if you take them off, okay, you're going to get a shock.
Yeah.
You're going to get a big shock, yeah. And I'm not going to tell you how I found that out. Okay. So the bottom line here is that I would run a definitely dedicated ground, right, earth ground, and then use PEX.
I would assume most local codes call for a dedicated earth ground.
Some do, but some of the old stuff that's out there still have those clamped on grounds.
Wow.
Yeah,
Incredible.
Scary. That's why you carry jumper cables.
Yeah.
Something we haven't really talked about is sort of PEX versus CPVC.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the advantages there?
Oh, can I take one, please?
Sure.
Go ahead.
I guess I got a guy in my territory who kind of likes to always trumpet that product. But CPVC are glued connections. We have to wait 24 hours for them to dry before you can actually do a pressure test. How long do we wait to pressure test that, sir?
We're just depending on the temperature. We're just about right now. I'm all ready. Let's go.
Already. So
Alrighty.
instead of waiting 24 hours, so I drive home after the job is done. I drive back the next day to do the pressure test. Before I leave the job with this system, I'm ready to pressure test.
Got it.
To me, that's huge. Time is money. You can't beat that.
Mm-hmm.
John Freylink asks if while you're sort of running the PEX and bending it, should you heat it to make it more pliable?
No, not necessary.
Okay.
Not necessary.
Joe Hickey wants to know if the pipe is sensitive to chemical exposure such as paint or foam. One common question that we get is about foam insulation.
Right, isonine.
Yeah.
Right. So with isonine, we want to make sure that before, we're kind of proactive, right? So instead of being reactive, we want to make sure that the products that you're using are safe, in other words, PEX friendly. So if you have a product out there that you're not exactly sure of, every chemical has a material safety data sheet. So you get that safety data sheet, you figure out the chemical composition, you let us know, we give you an answer right on the phone, no problem for our tech services. But when it comes to isonine, we have a steadfast rule of saying water-based, open cell, because it's going to be water-based. We don't have to worry about xylene being the propellant itself, that they use a lot in isonine, so water-based is great. And open cell is going to keep the temperature under the rating of the tubing. And they typically do it in several lifts, and typically it's like a 2-lift application, so they'll give the first spray and then they'll come back. But as far as the foam itself, no problem with it. Okay, directly onto the tubing. And When you're looking at the EP fittings, water base, fine. Water base is fine.
Here is this one. It might be a tough one. Do you say yes or no to push fit fittings with your tubing?
I'll put it this way.
A repair.
As a repair, yeah. You know, if you're stuck in the middle of the night and you say, you know what, a rock in a hard place, I'd do it. But you talking to me personally, because Uponor doesn't have a stance, I'm just going to say it's coming from Wes personally, is that I would use it for repair only, very, very, very temporary. But if you really want the connection to be right, this is the way to go. So you repaired it, you found this, hopefully you have some of these, you know, on the truck that you can make that repair right away. But if you don't, if you're stuck, you got to do something. But quite frankly, this is the way to go. I would not endorse a push.
And when I say repair, it's not that we would use that to repair our pipe.
No.
Somebody else's pipe
Yep.
had a problem.
Right.
I'm cutting it, I'll put that clamp fitting there, and then I take off the rest of it with, you know, Uponor.
Got it. Frank Steinruck asks if you guys have seen PEX-a used in unconventional ways, such as sprinklers, science labs, fish tanks, things like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
To all of that, we can't endorse any of those things. What we do is we move water and we move it well. So we do hydronic systems, whether it's going to be chilled water or hot water applications, or we do plumbing systems for potable water transport, and that's it. If there's pneumatics, if there's, you know, air tank, you know, some type of, you know, air fitting for a fish tank or something like that.
Dentist office.
Yeah, it's dentist office. Yeah, we don't do any of those.
Got it.
So that's not warranted at all.
Reggie Davies asks if he can install PEX in his baseboard heat in his house. He doesn't have radiant floor heat.
Sure.
Right from his boiler instead of copper.
Yeah.
Yes.
Don't go over 200 degrees. Make sure your high limit on your boiler is right, because if you go over 200 degrees, you will have an issue. But 180 and below, not a problem.
Yeah, we're rated up to 200 degrees at 80 psi.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Billy Freesby says heat tape on your PEX, yes or no?
Heat tape, yeah, not a problem. Yeah.
This was we sort of talked about this one earlier, but someone asked about certain dish soaps eating the pipe. Have you ever heard of that?
I've never heard of that. Now, I don't know how aggressive this dish soap they're using, but what are they using dish soap for? They're checking for leaks? We're talking about a ProPEX connection.
Right.
You wouldn't have a leak.
Right.
So if you're checking for leaks with dish soap, I'm trying to figure out what system you're actually using, because if you're water testing or air testing with this, and going back to your CPVC question again, you only can do a water test with CPVC. A lot of people don't realize that. You can end up with shrapnel
Right.
if you do an air test with CPVC.
Got it.
It can actually
Maybe they're thinking, because I've seen this before, or our competitors have either the stainless steel ring or the copper crimp ring, and it's underneath the kitchen sink. A lot of people store a lot of household chemicals under the kitchen sink, and they could be aggressive and eat those rings.
I agree with that.
I've seen that plenty of times.
Brian Martin says he's got two questions. Can he find a fixture unit count chart for sizing PEX somewhere?
We
Yes.
had that in the
Yeah.
PDAM.
So there's going to be an PDAM, and also at Uponor, there's a couple of places, uponorengineering.com and Uponor Pro /calculator. We have a calculator online, a free calculator. You guys like free, right? It's a free calculator online that you can easily size up a system with.
Is it, and then I think I know the answer to this. Is it okay to use foam fill in holes with Apex? With PEX-a?
What do you mean foam fill?
I guess he's asking if he could.
Oh, like
Block
like the great foam, like
Yeah.
the yellow, the red and yellow can you see?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's zero problem with that. Yeah,
Cool.
great stuff foam is fine. It will not hurt the pipe.
So, as we're winding down a little, we've sort of talked about it a bunch.
Uh-huh.
But what do you say to people who are skeptical about using PEX, the guys that are sticking with their copper and things like that?
Right. I honestly believe if PEX was first, copper wouldn't exist as far as a plumbing system. When I was first out there doing plumbing, we were cutting and threading brass nipples and galvanized pipes for drains and stuff like that. And then all of a sudden, someone comes along and say, you know, we're going to do copper. Right, so you get into my dad did it, his dad before him did it, that kind of stuff. So it becomes that kind of routine. And then I remember when I first explained this to my dad, The story went this way. We're sitting in the kitchen. I said, Dad, listen. I said, this is the new stuff. He said, oh, that's why you're moving to Minnesota, huh? I said, yeah, Dad, this is it. He says, man, this industry's really gone downhill. I said, well, how do you figure that? He said, well, now plastic pipe. I said, well, it's a little bit different than plastic. It's not your normal plastic. So I did the kink test. I heated it up. I made a connection. Everybody was fine. And he still looked at me, and he turned to my mom and said, hey, hon, don't clean that boy's room. He'll be back. All right. Well, I haven't been back in over 17 years. So I'm thinking this is pretty much bulletproof. I honestly, speaking from a plumber's mentality, I honestly would do this over copper any day. Any day. I wasn't sold at first, I'll be honest with you. I'm one of the old timers and I wasn't sold at first, but after using the product and not just working, this was a funny thing. I came to Uponor looking to say, hey, how can I join this great place, not, looking for a job. When I started using this product at this point on the cutting edge, I said, you know what, I want to be part of this.
What was your hang up at first?
My hang up was, to be honest with you, right?
Yeah.
Real men use brass. It's all about metal, and some people say you can't make it look neat, but quite frankly, we've made some ugly copper jobs too.
Oh,
so,
gosh.
Yeah, so it all depends on your personal skill.
Yeah.
I know for a fact, this stuff gone in, insulated, commercial jump, you couldn't tell it in between that and hard pipe. You definitely can't. Quite frankly, I have a little soft spot. I love this PEX. I do.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a Northeast issue from other parts of the country, but I know there's lots of contractors here that want to get the job installed as quickly as possible and off.
Right.
And I have plenty of guys, they can rough out a house. And I'm talking, 2,500, 3,000 square foot house, rough out a house plumbing-wise by noontime if they're using our pipe and our logic system, meaning the multi-port T's. Right. And working backwards from the way we teach them. Set your fixture group first, know where your multi-port T's are going to be, and then you feed it with your risers and flow through manifolds to finish the job. I mean, they come to me and tell me, hey, Jim, I'm off this job, noontime, 1 o'clock. And they're off to do something else.
And clean.
And clean.
Yeah, we're not, worried about a soccer lock
We've
commercial later
We've
on.
kept jobs on track as they finish different parts of the job, the project, these commercial projects, then, the trades would get paid. The plumbing guys are getting the job done quick and keeping everybody else on time so they all get paid on time. They've been like the heroes on some jobs.
Mm-hmm.
This is a quick one, I think. A couple people have asked about using the PEX in air systems.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. We've seen it done.
Yep.
Once again, we can't endorse those systems. We're strictly hydronics. Right, so it's going to be a potable water system or heating or chilled system, some type of hydronic heating or cooling. Yeah. There's also talking about the strength of this EP fitting.
Right. And
I happen to have a slide here. Let's go to slide 6 for a sec. So here we are. We're looking at this EP multi-port T, right? And at 2,160 psi, did we cause that fracture? What part of your system would ever see those kind of pressures? That's something to think about. I'll leave that one hang out there a little bit.
I'm going to do this one more question, and then we'll announce the winners to our contest.
Okay.
Peter Poor says that he's in the process of replacing the existing copper water pipes, and due to the age, and his water pH is somewhat high, 5.5. Are the bronze PEX fittings he's using going to dissolve in the same water that his copper pipes did?
No, that's an LF fitting. Right, lead-free fitting. No, he should be good in that system.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have the two winners. So,
excellent.
Jim, why don't you read the first one there?
Is that Anthony Felice?
Anthony Felice, yep.
Anthony Felice.
Wes.
And drum roll, please, Mr. Mike Sharp.
Okay.
Congratulations, guys.
So these guys have won a kit, an M12 expansion kit. We will message you guys and we'll get your address and we'll send it out to you. And before we sign off, is there anything else that you would like to say about Uponor and your system? And
I just say this. If you have any further questions, you can easily get a hold of me. I'll give you my email address is wes.cisco@uponor.com. And I'll even go as far as saying that I can be reached directly at 891-2000 at our main switchboard number and ask for me, and I'll switch you right over. I'd love to help.
Great. And if you have any questions for us, you can email ask@supplyhouse.com. Anything about pricing, we obviously supplyhouse.com supplies this great product. But thank you guys for coming in.
Thank you.
I thought
Pleasure.
it was very informative. And have a good night.
Good night.